Hello and welcome back. This week I'm looking at making a little side table. I start off by marking out my cut lines on the wood and then ruling straight edges with my set square. I move on, because there's only a couple of cuts, I make this with my handsaw just to keep things nice and easy. Handsaws also work as a set square, using the base of the handle and the straight edge on the back of the blade. I do this to mark out where I'm going to put my dowels in. I roll all the pieces of wood over onto their side and then make the marks halfway down where I want to do my drilling. I drill to a depth of 2 centimeters on all the internal sides before adding some wood glue and some dowels and using body weight to place them together. Once I'm happy with how they're sat, I put them in my homemade clamp just to hold them tightly in place overnight. Either my markings or my drillings were off because the board wasn't flat, so here I just smoothed things out with a router before moving on and putting my logs on top to see how they go. After numbering them, I move on. I make full hole cuts on the 2 outer pieces and then use my router just to do a shallow pass through the outline, just so the logs sit in the table itself. I didn't have a wide enough router base to span the gap, and as such I've not left the cleanest of bases, so I just go through with my chisel and just clean it up. A little 2-part glue will hold these nicely in place until I can set it firm with the epoxy later. I decided to round 2 of the corners just to make it a bit more interesting instead of a completely square table. I did this just using my jigsaw and went back later and sanded it just to clean the edges. Trimming the log inserts down was quite a challenge, but I found that my little pull saw did well in the most part, other than the odd piece that fell off. Now it's time to pour the epoxy. I put an aqua colour mixed through the middle of it, just so it would highlight this part of the table and make it more of a feature. Due to the pour being quite thin, it only took 24 hours to cure. This was the messiest part, so I did it out on my decking, sanding the epoxy off and trying to get a nice flush edge. The belt sander made quick work of squaring off the edges and rounding the corners neatly. After several goes with the belt sander, I move on to my random orbital sander, going from 80 to 120, 180 and 220 grit, before completing the top by rounding over the edges. It came up quite nicely after sanding. I was very impressed in how it turned out, better than I expected. No table's complete without legs, and for this I'd purchased a couple of hairpin legs from the internet. I thought they'd look quite nice with the style of top. I marked then pre-drilled all my screw holes before attaching each leg one at a time. I used a total of 3 screws in each leg, and that I found held things nice and tight. Now it's time to finish. I used a light oak stain. My preferred method is always to rub on, give it 10 or 15 minutes to soak in, and then rub off again with a clean rag. And that's where I ran into a problem then, because I couldn't decide whether I preferred it as a coffee table in my front room, or as I'd originally planned, as a little side table in the hallway. I'm still undecided. Let me know which you think looks best. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next build.